You're listening to the Synergy Leadership Podcast, a discussion with engaging, empowering, and enlightening leaders about the greatest competitive advantage in business and entrepreneurship that often goes unrecognized: a team's energy. Here's your host, the woman who puts the energy in synergy, Karen R. Jenkins.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Synergy Leadership Podcast, where we explore how leaders, entrepreneurs, and professionals can engage, enlighten, and empower themselves and others. Today, I'm really excited to host a panel of dynamic young professionals. They represent the next generation of leaders shaping our workplaces and our communities. Our conversation will focus on how prepared they felt stepping into the workforce after college, what worked for them, what was missing, and what they've learned along the way. This discussion is especially important because it highlights the gaps and the opportunities where communities like the Centerverse can help bridge the divide between academic preparation and real-world readiness. Our goal today isn't just to reflect on our journeys, but also to identify what support and resources young professionals need to thrive. Let's begin by introducing our wonderful panel that we put together today. McKenzie, if you would introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is McKenzie Israel. I'm originally from Columbia, South Carolina, but I do live in Charlotte, North Carolina now. I went to the University of South Carolina and obtained my BA in public health, and then I went back and got my Master of Public Health in Health Services Policy and Management. And from there, I moved kind of to the upstate and then to Charlotte to work as a project manager on different research foundation projects.
Thank you for being here, McKenzie. Raoul.
I am Raoul Jenkins. I am a recent grad also of the University of South Carolina. I got my bachelor's in biological sciences and am now a project coordinator for none other than KRJ Consulting.
Thank you. Peyton, if you would introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Peyton Pendarvis. I am also from Columbia, South Carolina. I currently stay in Atlanta, Georgia. I got my bachelor's in marketing from Coastal Carolina, and I just recently graduated from the Savannah College of Art and Design with a master's in creative business. Currently, I am a contractor for the Russell Innovation Center for Entrepreneurs. If you aren't familiar with Harvin J. Russell, he was one of the most prolific entrepreneurs, Black entrepreneurs specifically from the civil rights era. He had a very, very large hand in constructing the Atlanta skyline, actually, and the center. We are dedicated to growing and scaling Black entrepreneurs, and a big number that we could put out there is contributing $577 million in annual economic impact to the Atlanta community.
Excellent, thank you. And Patrice.
Hi, everyone. My name is Patrice Jenkins. I'm a director of operations here at KRJ Consulting. I've been with the company for about 8 years. I'm also a graduate of the University of South Carolina Darla Moore Business School. I got my BA in entrepreneurship and marketing. I'm also an IT PSO for KRJ Consulting, and I have dibbled and dabbled in federal contracting as well. So I've program managed, project managed quite a bit of federal contracts, and I'm just happy to be here today.
And Duane.
Hey everyone, I'm Duane Harvin Jr. I am currently a media executive with Gray Media out of WIS. I work with local businesses, helping them get their message out there and reach the ideal person that they're looking to reach. I am a graduate of Newberry College, previously worked for State Farm in Charleston, and I'm just happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
And thank you guys for taking time out of your day to come and spend time with us. You know, our audience that we typically tap into ranges in age from probably, I would say 30 to 65. But today I wanted to focus on the young professionals and the needs that you have and the challenges that you have. So today I've asked Raoul to pinch hit with me as co-host and ask some of his colleagues some questions, and then I'll be asking you some questions and just have some conversation about what your experiences have been since you've graduated. So Raoul, I'll turn it over to you to talk about what's been going on since they graduated.
Okay, so peers, I am going to ask you a few questions. Starting off, when you first graduated college, what were your biggest expectations about entering the workforce?
We'll start with McKenzie.
I think mine is maybe similar, but a little different because I was in public health and I graduated a little bit early. So I graduated in December 2019, so right before COVID. So my expectation when I came out of school was that I would have a job. But because of the state of public health and the things that they needed, the kind of skill set, the experience that they needed to literally solve the world's problems, I did not have a job or maybe high prospects looking into a job. But what I did, I ended up going back to school. So that's why I ended up going back for my master's.
And what happened after that? Like, did you have a good transition from the master's to the employment?
I feel like from master's to employment, yes, I think the expectation that I had was that there would be more structure in the environment that I was in. I think what I'm learning through experience now is that everywhere you go, things are in transition, especially in healthcare. So there's always going to be operational challenges. There's always going to be some kind of new compliance, rule that you have to go with. You're checking into policy all the time. So those are not the expectations I had. I thought I was going to come into a system that is pretty much already built out. Everything would flow smoothly. I would come in and I would be learning instead of kind of jumping in and start building. But I do appreciate the opportunity to have jumped in and be able to build something or to work with people in challenge because I think it's stretched my skill set very early and given me a lot of confidence to jump in with leaders or executives because I've already had to do that in smaller settings. So in larger settings, it's like, okay, well, I've done this before. I know how to communicate with you, and this is how we can do it.
Thank you. What about you, Peyton?
Yeah, so my biggest expectation, one, that finding a job would be easy. It was not easy. It's cliche, but a lot of people, like your network is your net worth. That's very true. So like who you know, especially out here in the city in Atlanta. And then second, it was that like skills and the things that I learned in the classroom would take precedent over all of the other stuff. But as I entered into the workforce, emotional intelligence seemed to be like the most important thing outside of, or taking precedent over like just IQ and the skills. So that was something that I noticed.
PJ, do you want to answer this one? Because you kind of had a different experience, but if not, I can move on to Duane.
Yeah, sure. I think my expectation was similar to Peyton's, that a lot of what was learned and talked about and discussed in the classroom would eloquently just transfer over, and that is not the case at all. I think I use classroom knowledge probably a good 5%. But just the things that they don't talk about is, you have to be able to manage yourself. You have to be able to manage other personalities, to Peyton's point about emotional intelligence. You have to figure out what your own strengths are, what your own weaknesses are, figure out how you're going to develop yourself as a professional. And then obviously, I'll also mention that I think I also had an expectation about what I would be making, and I think how fast I would be able to kind of scale up and grow. And again, there's some puzzle pieces to that as well to kind of help you manage your expectations on how you grow within your career. And then also just figuring out what you like and what you don't like. I think I graduated understand like, hey, I like business, and I've tried different positions and different roles when it comes to it. But you don't know what you don't like until you try it. So I think you just jump in the water and you just try to figure out how to swim for yourself, but definitely you need to manage your expectations for sure.
Yeah, Duane.
So to piggyback off Peyton and Patrice, I would definitely say that classroom knowledge and analytical skills are very important. However, entering the workforce, you quickly realize that you're, working with different types of people, and you have to start thinking about, role playing and dealing with people. So I'd say one big thing that I quickly realized is, you really have to understand people, and you really have to network, and have a little bit more than just analytical skills. So I definitely say that my expectation of entering the workforce quickly changed because I realized, that there's a lot more skills that you have to kind of create and adapt to be successful and grow.
And I hear that. I hear that probably across the board with not just Patrice and Raoul when we were talking, but other people that I'm coming across that are recent grads. So I guess you guys are saying, well, it's nice to know that I'm not the only one, right? So Raoul, I'll pitch it back to you.
So, peers, what came as a surprise or shock once you entered the workforce?
Let's pitch it back to you, McKenzie.
I'll say things that came as a surprise or shock. Kind of still talking about what we were saying with our expectations was the people management. I think my expectation was I would come into the situation as, an entry-level employee, as a beginner, looking to still learn, looking to be able to absorb information from someone. But quickly realizing that, like, yes, people have their own roles, and it's not that they don't want to help or they don't care about building you, but that's just not maybe the place to get that, or just in general, kind of figuring out what the office politics and the dynamics were like being in these spaces where before your relationship was student to professor, maybe, or student to mentor, but now you are working professionals and peers, and they are counting on you and your experiences and your skills in order to achieve their goal. And sometimes they might need you to do your part before they can do their part. So I think it was a surprise and shock for me to go in and there be so much responsibility on me so soon and so early. Again, a challenge that I took on and was excited because I had the confidence to take that on. And it was a skill stretch for sure that I appreciate now. But it was definitely a shock to go in and be like, oh, okay, I am the professional in this space. I do have authority and autonomy to make a decision.
Yeah, very true, very true. And I'll touch on that in a little bit. Peyton, let's come and talk to you about your experience.
Yeah, like when McKenzie mentioned office politics, that's a big one. Like learning how to navigate the spaces, and just like you can't be 100%. I've learned that you can't be 100% transparent with people all the time, and just an open book and telling people all of your business. So that's a big one. Also, like there's been like an imposter syndrome type of thing, but the more that I get in like different meetings and things, I realize like, oh no, like even though like you're young, like your voice still matters in these settings and in these meetings. And a lot of people within like leadership roles, I've learned that like you don't have to be scared to converse with them. Yes, they have more experience. However, like it's not all. I think Obama said something to the effect of like you realize like it's not. I don't know, like the facade kind of fades after a while, like the smoke and mirrors, and you learn that you know just as much as these people. They just have more experience. So.
Yeah, so I remember that. I think I saw it on Instagram. He was talking about when he goes into these different rooms, and I've had the exact same experience. You go into these different rooms with these people, with these positions, with these titles that've been there for a while, and then you sit around and you realize, well, wait a minute, you're no different than me, right? Or you don't know, you might know something that is different from what I know, but it may not be more than what I know. Maybe your category is on oranges, but mine is on bananas. But I still bring that value to the table. So, Peyton and I have had the conversation about imposter syndrome that everybody experiences, but it's a false narrative that you are there not because you need to know what the boss knows, or not because you need to know what every teammate on your teammate knows. You are there because there is a value that you add, and that's where you stand in your truth and your confidence, not in comparing yourself to others. Does that make sense? Yes. So, PJ.
I would say, for me, it was a different road because I was kind of just pushed into a managerial role at what, 2021. And the people who I had reporting to me were old enough to be my father. And the dynamic of earning their respect while also like managing my own emotions about being in a new role, imposter syndrome to Peyton's point, and just being able to make a decision, and trust myself that I can make the right decision, um, was a really big learning curve for me. I come from an athletic world where I really play well and exist well on a team. However, everyone doesn't come from that. So their value systems, as far as like what motivates them, when it comes to their job or their work or their role that they play is way different from mine. I know what it's like to be the person who needs to get pretty much majority of the work done, and I know also how to be a role player. But it was just really difficult for me to again gain the respect because I'm coming in, I'm fresh out of college, I don't have as much experience as them, and they're looking at me like, who's going to be answering to a 21-year-old? And I had to figure out again how to, one, make sure that I don't discount what I bring to the table because I do bring a lot to the table. And once I was able to kind of work the puzzle out with the different personalities, I was able to gain their trust within my leadership. And we managed really, really well. I was able to push them, but I also allowed them to push me as well to make me a better leader. So I would just say that the shock is wherever, if you're coming in at an entry level position, if you somehow are end up in my position where you're managing probably like 30 people who are double your age, you have to go to the table with the confidence that you will figure it out. And I had to understand that confidence doesn't mean that I'm coming to the table knowing everything. It means that I'm going to figure it out. I trust myself that no matter what the problem is, I'm going to figure it out. The last shock thing I'll say is that just a handful of people really do a lot of the work. A handful of people over a large body of team, to me, I feel like really push, push, push. But a good leader, one thing I had to figure out is the ones who can still motivate the ones who may not be the super visionary. They may not be the ones who are really, really quick to find a solution, but you can find the gaps where they exist, where they completely add super value without even knowing it, to the team. So you continue to evolve, but definitely a shock on how much personality balancing you have to do between yourself and others.
So the premise is, and this is something that I heard back when I was your age, which is a minute ago, what Patrice was references, there's a saying that says 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people. And y'all seen it. Even in the time that y'all have been in this work environment, y'all have seen you have your go-to people. I'll tell you, y'all are probably those go-to people just because of the nature of who you are. And that's a good thing because now you are validating your value. So when hard decisions have to be made, when people are, coming in and doing reductions in force and workforce and they're cutting people back, when you're that part of that 20%, they don't want to let you go. They might prune some of the other ones off. So we'll talk about that later. Duane, let me come back and give you an opportunity to respond.
Yeah, so I would say coming into the workforce was a very interesting time in my life because, kind of how you all touched on it, growing up, you're always around your peers, you're always around people that are your age. But when you enter the workforce, you're with people that are double your age. In some cases, some people were older than my parents. And so it was very interesting because they always would look at, like a younger person, like, older people always have something to say about the younger generation. That's just the nature of what it is. And so they come in kind of with this assumption of how you're going to be. And, once you kind of, establish yourself, they're like, oh, he's a little bit different or she's different. And then all of a sudden, then now they're open to, ideas and they're open to feedback. But the biggest thing that I heard one of you touch on earlier is the value. So there's people that are always going to be that are going to know more than you, but sometimes it's because they've been there. They've been in that industry, they've been in this role for such a long time that their wealth of knowledge comes from experience and not knowledge. And so I think that all of us, bring a really good, value to our companies that we work for. And I think there's a reason, kind of how we become those go-to people.
Definitely, definitely. Raoul, go back and ask the next question.
What skills or knowledge do you wish had been taught before entering the workforce?
Let's back up and go with Duane first this time.
Okay. So I would say managing personalities, managing office politics is something that no one teaches you, is something that's acquired. So coming in, you know, you're talking to different people and you always have, certain things kind of going on. So like, when you're in school, you're always learning the analytical things. You're always, just building your wealth of knowledge, but managing personalities and managing people, I think are some of the skills that aren't really taught, and it's something that is a little overlooked.
Okay, PJ.
Yeah, I agree with Duane, managing personalities. I'll even go a step further to say also learning how to manage up. I think sometimes when you have bosses or leadership that's above you, and you're on the ground, so you're in the day to day, so your perspective, obviously the angle that you approach things are a little bit differently. Sometimes articulating that effortlessly to management, so that they can kind of partake in a better perspective when making a decision can be quite fun. Also, I would say just managing productivity within yourself. So managing yourself, also managing others, and then how to kind of streamline your own self-development. I think when you're in school, your self-development plan is pretty much already a baseline one is already written out for you. You know that, at the end of the ninth grade, you're going to the 10th. At the end of your freshman year, you're going to your sophomore year. Well, when you graduate, and you want to pace your career, you have to kind of set those milestones yourself. And you don't know what's too big, or when you're ready. Sometimes you'll have other people in your ear kind of saying different opportunities, and you could be ready for them, but you might not know. So I would say understanding how to kind of come into the workforce. And then I would always advise someone to get with a professional coach of some form, to kind of help you pace yourself to say, in 10 years, 5 years is where I want to be. How can I streamline my professional growth in that way? So I would say that.
Okay, Peyton.
Yeah, so similar to y'all, those soft skills that y'all mentioned, but then also for me personally, I don't know if I'm the only one, but I think that some of those like administrative skills, I had to like learn those quickly. So like even for example, like CCing somebody on an email, like, oh, like, if you don't add CC these people, if you don't loop them in, like they don't know what's going on with this project. Scheduling meetings, just like the simple things. I didn't really learn that stuff in school. So just like being thrown into the fire, like I had to pick up on it, fairly quickly. It seems like trivial, but it's very important. I learned. So
Okay, thank you, McKenzie.
I'll say, and I like what Peyton said too. I think it's going in and knowing that I need to literally scope out everything. I need to know the workings of how things go. Because if I don't, then I'm gonna forget to CC one person who might be involved in a project that's maybe 3 or 4 departments away, or the project might have started, a couple years ago and it's already in motion. But we don't know that because we haven't talked to the right people. So definitely knowing the organization, just the amount of like side time that you need to spend pretty much researching your job and who the people you're working with are. What is their position? What do they do? Where are they literally physically, like in the geography? Because I have set up meetings sometimes thinking somebody is in person in Charlotte and they are not available. They're not there. So it's definitely those kind of soft skills, administrative skills. And then like what Patrice said, just how do I grow from here? Like all throughout our lives, things are structured. We know we're going K through 12. And after we get to K through 12, we know we're going to school or we're going to a trade school. We have a syllabus, things are broken down for us. We know we're going to reach these learning milestones. And then you get out of it. And that's something that I'm dealing with now too, is creating a new routine or a new structure that one allows me to enjoy my life, make time for my work, make time for my friends, socially develop, but also still grow, still get new hobbies, new skills, and continue to pace myself. Also, I think I didn't realize, or I don't think I had enough education on what my options were. Like I came out of school hearing that, okay, you're gonna go work for the health department with your public health degree. And that's great, but that's not all that there is. Like I can do so much more outside of community health and community programming. I didn't realize that consulting at large firms is even an option for me. I didn't realize that project management and research was an option. Didn't realize that I could go be a UX researcher. I could go work for TikTok. I could go literally be a journalist because I have the ability to do data analytics and then give you a narrative about what I'm looking at. So I think I really wish they would have done a better job. And I feel like my peers and Darla more, I feel like y'all had more experience at least. I don't think that, like you said, they probably didn't give you everything, but I've been able to watch y'all at least. Like they spend time telling y'all what your options are, what you can do, because there's so much more than just DHEC in Columbia.
Very true, very true. Patrice, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I
You want to
wanted to
share
add
some?
one more thing. When McKenzie was talking, it definitely sparked a thing of just pivoting. I, when you're in the workforce, you have to pivot and pivot and pivot and pivot and pivot and be really flexible. You have to be flexible emotionally. You have to be flexible within your personality as well, but also within how you approach something. And that's something that I definitely struggled with because typically I can follow a plan A to Z, but when you have to come up with new ideas to still get to Z and it's not, succinct in order, you have to get really creative sometimes because it involves more than just you and how you think. Because how I think might not be how Billy Bob over here thinks. And if we're in a team, I have to somehow include how he thinks. So pivoting is definitely a soft skill I wish I would have mastered a little bit better.
And I think one of the things you guys are probably seeing in the workforce, sometimes there's this thing called organized chaos. And Patrice is right. If you're that rigid and you don't have the ability to be flexible and agile, I think the agility is the important thing. And I think that the older we get, the less agility we display, and that's not a good thing. So those people that can be flexible, that do practice being agile, tend to perform a lot better. Raoul, go to the next question.
How well did college prepare you for managing finances, work-life balance, and mental well-being once you started working?
I would say college did a really good job of helping me. Being that, I was a business major, we would do exercises. Excuse me. We do exercises about, how much are you projected to make? How much is your rent going to look like? What's your car payment going to look like? What are your bills? So I would say my college definitely helped me in that way, kind of managing finances. But I'd also say college is the first time that you're on your own. It's the first time that you're away. And so, you're managing, going to class, but also being social. And I was, a collegiate athlete, so I'm also managing that. So I'd say, it was the first step away, but it also taught me on both ends how to kind of manage time and, be productive in all aspects of life.
Okay. McKenzie.
I really like Duane's answer. I think that's very true. College gives you a little taste of what adulthood is like. Like you kind of have, whether it's your stipend, if you have parents that support you, if you have a part-time job, whatever that little pot of money is, that's what you manage. You still have to go to school, aka work if you don't have a side job. You still have to be social. You still have to find ways to be involved, do other academic things outside of it. And it's just really interesting the way that you grow and the things that you the ways that you kind of figure out how to make things work with the little bit that you have. So I do think it prepares you in that way. We didn't have, I like what y'all had where y'all broke down y'all's finances. They never did that for us. Sometimes I feel like they did that because they didn't want us to maybe be upset about what a $50,000 salary would get us when some of us had loans and things like that. So maybe that was a good reason. But I do think that there was a lot of preparation just as far as, especially in this work, you have to be, you have to have some kind of emotional release because it can get overwhelming sometimes when you are passionate about communities in need and when you want to get them resources and you want to help, but there might be barriers with policy or different, programs already in place, whatever the situation might be. So finding time to, have something outside of work that makes you happy, finding ways to separate yourself from your work. There's a task at hand and then there's the emotional part. So I think we were prepared pretty well in that way. I think USC did a good job.
Okay. Peyton.
Yeah, I definitely felt prepared. Similar to Duane, having like a business degree. I had to do so many like financial statements and pro formas. Honestly, I feel like personally, like life is a breeze right now. Um, we had to go through like 10-week sprints all the time. I feel like I had no time, and then I was still like interning on the side. Like I just had no time at all. But now I feel like I could breathe a little bit. So honestly, I feel like in terms of like personal life, work-life balance, everything like that, like it's Saturday and I'm like, oh, like I can actually go enjoy the art fair this Saturday and I don't have assignments to do or things like that. So I feel like life is pretty much a breeze at the moment.
Awesome. BJ.
I think for me, because you you came from banking and me and Raoul had a lot more time to kind of get used to budgets and this and that, just because we started a little bit earlier. I think my transition to responsibility on that kind of front was probably better than my friends were coming in hot. I would say the biggest thing coming into college that I would say helped me as I left was just that understanding that no matter what, you got to get it done. There's different ways that you can kind of finesse your way out of some stuff in high school and wiggle out of responsibility. However, in college is different. Your bills are due. This is due. You have to, show up to this internship. You got to show up here. There's real consequences, and those consequences are pretty big to not showing up. So no matter how you're feeling or what you have going on, like you have to show up. College for me was very difficult emotionally and mentally. We had a lot going on. I had a lot going on. And I also was a collegiate athlete as well. So it's a lot to juggle, but I think having to learn how to do that and getting the confidence to see that, yes, bumpy and it might be clumsy and ugly, but I still got through. So as an adult, I'm able to kind of show up and manage a little bit better. And then similar to Peyton and Duane, obviously in business, you're juggling topics that can easily translate on a personal level for the most part. And I would say that it'll give you different ideas on how to financially kind of exist and be organized. So yeah.
So I think the reality is for college, most people say, I'm going to college to major in math or accounting or public health or marketing or business. And that's true. But the reality is that college students go through the Mr. Miyagi-san experience, the Karate Kid, where there's so many auxiliary skills that you're being taught that you don't even know you're being taught. One is productivity. One is, I'm gonna call it task management and balance. So when you had a syllabus from 3 to 4 classes, and you're trying to manage this class and this class and this schedule and this exam and this study time and that study time, plus your party life, whatever else you had going on. All of those things were preparing you for not only your adult personal life, but also your business life. So you guys have multiple things on your jobs now that you are responsible for. And because you were able to do those little things that you did in college with keeping up with your schedule, knowing where to be in class, knowing how, and even from a time management perspective. So the premise that college is just about the academia is not true. The other thing that it teaches you, now granted, I don't think you guys have the problem some of the younger kids have, but it teaches you communication skills. It teaches you team skills, because some of you went to classes where you had to work on projects with other people. And you probably saw the 80-20 rule there too, where 80% of the work was being done by 20% of the people in your group. So just go back and reflect on what other skills. So for me, when I was in high school, so I'll go back to high school, I took algebra 1 in ninth, algebra 2, algebra 3, and then 11th, and then calculus. I'm like, what am I going to do with all this math? I don't need all this math. What am I doing with it? And the reality for me was I have excellent problem solving skills. And it came from me using that part of my brain to logically think through things. So there isn't too much that somebody can't give me that I can't rattle off real quick like. And I think a lot of that came from just in the Mr. Miyagi-san perspective of me learning how to take that strategy and apply it to real world life. Raoul, I'm gonna get you to ask another question, and then I want to go around and do a little round robin, kind of have some open dialogue about some of the things that you guys want to talk about.
If you could go back and design a transition to the workforce program for young graduates, what would you include?
I would start with definitely the finance thing that we talked about. So one, what is your first year entry level job going to look like? And then think about what is your career goal? What do you aspire to? So that way, as I'm like thinking about where I want my career to go, I can think about, okay, what levels do I need to get to? What maybe additional certifications do I need to get? How do I need to start strategizing my career growth and my projects that I'm in? I also wish that, or if I had to build a transition program, I think I would have built in maybe more like like rotational kind of things. Like I think how the doctors, they spend a couple of weeks here in this department and they might go to ortho, they'll do peds, they kind of get a taste of everything. I would definitely build in something like that where we'll go shadow places, but it's kind of like once you pick where you're going to be at, that's your internship for the remainder of the semester. You decide you hate it, you're going to have to finish this out regardless. And then also kind of similar to that as far as getting the experience of different roles, but also experience of working in different organization types. So one, we can network and see what are my options outside of DHEC, but also the different organizations and how they're structured. Like, how do they operate? What kind of scenario do I really want to be in? How do I want, like, where do I want to be positioned for my role? What do I want to have authority over, autonomy over? Because I think a lot of that I didn't realize or know how to make that decision until I had been exposed to it to know, oh, I don't like that and I want to be somewhere else.
Great. And at your age, that's what you guys are doing right now. At my age, back in the day, people got a job and they kind of stayed with it. One thing I can appreciate about your generation is that y'all go in and you work in an area and you might do it for 2 years, 3 years, and then hey, let me go off and find something else. Back in the day when we were hiring people, if you had somebody that was jumping around and you looked at their resume and they were here for 2 years and 2 years, 2 years, like, no, we don't want that person because they were looking for longevity. It's not like that anymore. That's all you have right now is people that are getting experience. But the good news is it enhances your skill set because now instead of being just a one-trick pony that knows just this thing, you now have been exposed to different roles in different, maybe even in different industries that you can now pool that experience and bring it back to your current role. So just a difference in what was happening back then and what's happening now. So let's see, let's go to Duane. If you had that ability, what would your transition program incorporate?
If I had the ability to, add a few things to a transitional program, one of the biggest things that I'd add to Mackenzie's point is the level of options that are available. Oftentimes, you go to a career fair here and there, or kind of what your parents and your family are doing, but you don't understand that there's roles within roles, and there's so many companies out there that we just don't know about. So I'd say, they say exposure leads to expansion. So understanding that there are just so many options out there, and just to really dig deeper to find those different opportunities. Another thing I'd say is role playing. So we sit in a lecture and we're being, I don't want to say talked at, but by a teacher, and then we have a test. But having a little more collaboration and learning how to kind of deal with people, I think, are some of the biggest things into success. You look at engineers, and they're typically dry. But if they had that level of collaboration when they were younger, sometimes maybe they are a little more personal in that role. So I'd say role playing is big. Um, Exposure to different career opportunities are big. But also, definitely want to build in that guide that kind of shows you, what kind of role are you looking for? What does that salary look like? And kind of building in, what their expenses will look like as well.
And DJ, with that, and I want you and Patrice to touch on this because both of you had an opportunity to go through Leadership Columbia.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Leadership Columbia enhanced your ability to understand kind of what other roles or things might be out there and might be available, or in other words, what was the impact on Leadership Columbia on you from the Leadership Columbia program? And then I'm gonna come to Patrice. You can answer the question and that question. I'll finish up with you, Peyton.
Yeah, Leadership Columbia was very good. Again, exposure leads to expansion. So just being exposed, there were 66 people in the class. So I got to talk to 65 different people that are doing 65 different things, in the community that we live in. So being able to talk to different people, different ages, everyone's not from Columbia. So just getting a perspective of, the world as a whole. But also working with local businesses and nonprofits that would come in and kind of talk to us. We got to talk to the mayor. Every class day was a different focus. So, economic development to health to politics, just getting that overall perspective of how everyone has a different role in the community and how important they all are. So that exposure that I would say to the backside of Columbia that many people may not know about was one of the biggest takeaways that I'd had.
Okay. So PJ, if you want to answer the question and then also add any flavor from the experience of Leadership Columbia.
So if the question was the original question was about if we were to have a program, a what?
If you could go back and design a transitional workforce program for new graduates,
Okay.
what would it include?
Okay, so first things first, I would put every new graduate within the program would get a coach or a mentor for probably like 6 months or whatever. Because then once you get a little bit more accustomed to yourself, you can tailor your coach, meaning that your coach who you start with might not be the coach that you need to finish with. So you'll progress if that's needed, but definitely will get a coach. Need to go over what your values are, what's your core values are, what are your core values today? And then also what they would need to go through different types of strength and weaknesses tests to see like what their self leadership looks like, but who they are as a professional. So for people who speak athlete language, we're trying to figure out what your player build is outside of your mental skill set when you come, because I think your player build has more to do with your player build personality wise is really going to be the thing that drives you there, and then what you learn and what you grasp and you as a I don't want to say, I don't, the word isn't coming. I guess what your knowledge base is as far as your role is concerned is only half of it, but what your personality is the other half. So we would deal with all of that and then, get your goals and then explore different options and what those could look like. Because again, like everyone said, I don't think even I understood what all options that I had and different ways that I could fit into a system. Um, I love the role playing idea as well. I 100% agree with being talked to. And then again at USC, once you get to a certain space, you're one of 200 in a class setting. But a lot of business is talking, it's negotiations, it's a communication. And it's the people who can communicate the best. I don't know why, but that's what it is. Communicate their ideas the best and communicate strategies and solutions the best and approaches the best. So being able to practice that amongst different personalities. So when you are talking to an engineer and you might be a really enthusiastic person, even though shout out to the engineers, they might not be as enthusiastic about something, but you still can, approach the conversation, approach networking a little bit better. So I think it's just more of a reality-based type of program because school, again, works on the knowledge base, but there's a whole nother playbook out here that you really need help with. So those things. And as far as Leadership Columbia is concerned, um, yes, you're around a large group of other professionals in different roles, some that you never even heard of. But for me, I would say the biggest impact that it had on me that school did not teach me is I didn't understand completely from a holistic standpoint how a community is a business and how each different that how a community what makes up a community and how it functions, how it's funded. Um, that is so important. I cannot stress the importance of for students to understand that even in high school, because our generation, I think you do have people who naturally have that community oriented spark, but for a large point of us, um, we don't understand where we even fit in the community because you're thinking about career, but how your career somehow or what your role is as a career person or not, fits within your community. When you think about community holistically, you're able to me, I feel like your solutions are better, your strategies are better. Because wherever you are, no matter where you are, whether you're in Columbia or in another state, in another city, in another country, you're going to be a part of a community. So understanding again how it works, how money is filtered in, how it's filtered out, how the school systems work, how they tie into the politics of it, how those things tie into, the hospitals and whatever. When you do that, then your career to me has an opportunity to become a little bit bigger than you. Because yeah, you can add to your team, yeah, you can add to your company, but when you actually sit within yourself and say, I can add to my community and I know where I fit in, I know what drives what. I think it just allows a whole different perspective that a lot of people are missing out on. When you allow for that gap to exist, people make assumptions. They don't feel, they don't feel a part of community. They don't feel like their voice matters. And I think that's a lot of what some of our generation feels when it comes to voting as well. It all leads back to all of that. So I think it's very, very, very important for people to understand how community works, what all players make up your community, how the community is funded, and the businesses that run that thing. Because it's an amazing to come out of Leadership Columbia and really be like, oh my goodness, this one community is scalable, because you go from community to state to south, it's different sectors, to countries. Like, it just continues to scale, and your imagination can take you beyond and beyond and beyond just off of that understanding alone. So I think that was very important for me to grasp, that I did not grasp in college. I think I got it a little bit in sections, but not holistically.
So what I'll recommend to our audience, but specifically McKenzie and to Peyton and Charlotte, I know they have a leadership. I think it's called Leadership Charlotte. It may not be. It may be Leadership Atlanta. But if you guys, especially at your age, if you have the opportunity to apply and go through that, it truly does educate you and exposes you to the infrastructure of a community, from the governmental part of it to the business part of it to the support part of it. So let's wrap it up with Peyton rounding out this question before we get to the next one. Peyton, do we need to repeat the question? You remember, because I know we've been talking.
Oh no, I remember it. I think all of y'all hit on a lot of great points. Honestly, I like the communication piece and like adjusting your message based on, the audience so that it will land properly. I think also with communication, it's like the thing of finding your voice. I think that's really important, because you can have all of this knowledge, but if you're not speaking to it and letting people know, what you're thinking in your head, then, nobody can guess it. I think the soft skills and admin skills that we hit on earlier is really important. And then Patrice, I like what you were talking about, like with community. It also, like, when you were talking, I was thinking like about systems, because even like with organizations, businesses, it's all like a system, right? So understanding like that cause and effect doesn't always happen in one specific, time frame. Sometimes we allow like our short-term solutions to erode the long-term goals, right? So understanding like the systems and how things play out within organizations, I think is really important. Problem solving, super important. I do think that everyone should have a mentor. One of the things that my mentor told me that was like a switch for me, I remember I had like this problem, and I went to him and I was asking him about it, and he was like, well, did you even like try to figure out a solution before coming to me? And that's like the switch that it was for me. And I take that like into the workplace. Like, I try to figure out how to solve a problem, because a lot of times, even like leaders, they may have the same facts and information that we do. All right. So trying to not just like going to a leader for a solution, but trying to figure out a solution of your own, because one day you will be in in that position, and having that autonomy, like McKenzie talked about earlier, to kind of find your own solutions.
Thank you for that.
I was thinking, because that's like one of the biggest things people love to say is, oh, like, what are we doing for systems thinking? It's like a big buzzword. I was like, if I could pop this up right here, that'd be perfect. But yeah.
I'm gonna come back around in a minute and get each of you to share with us what advice you would give to this year's graduates entering the workforce. But before we get to that, I kind of want to wrap it up in touching on a few things that really resonated from almost all of you. One was what I heard one of you say, one of the skills that you wish you had was networking. I don't know and I'll pause here. So I'm wasn't planning to ask this question, but let's go here. How many of you were actually taught how to network? And do you really think that you are doing it effectively right now? I'm gonna end with you. I'm gonna end with you because I know you. So, McKenzie, do you know how to network, and how effectively are you networking?
I feel like I'm a very base level networker. I don't feel like I'm very good at it. I think some of that is like a confidence thing. I feel like I get shy when it's time to do the professional social thing. I feel like I'm learning, but I don't feel like anybody's ever walked me through that.
Okay, fair enough. Peyton.
I can't say that I was taught. Honestly, I feel like I just learned it. And it's like in this new role that I've been in, working within the development department and the partnerships. And one of the things that was taught to me was, yes, we're all professionals. You know, we all have these different roles, but also like we're all people. So it's not all about, you know, just talking about your roles and what you do, like connecting with people on a human level, and keeping that in mind that we're all humans, I think was something that was really big for me that I just learned, but I honestly just learned it. So
PJ.
Yeah, I was taught to network by you, but I'm not a natural networking type of person. So a lot of it for me is getting over myself. And when I'm actually in position to do it, to really, really push myself to really work the room. But do I know how to do it? Yeah, it's not my cup of tea.
Raoul,
But it's very necessary.
Raoul, I'm gonna pull you in on this one as well. What about you on networking?
I'm a natural born networker. I mean, I get it from you. Hello.
Yeah, that part.
I am.
And then the reason I wanted Duane to go last is because I have watched him, and I want to hear what he has to say.
Your network is your net worth. When I first moved to Columbia 2 years ago, I had a little bit of imposter syndrome because the role that I'm in allowed me to be in rooms with people who are, CEOs of mega million dollar companies, VPs and things like that. But as I grew, I got more confident, and I noticed that confidence radiates amongst people. So once I got confidence in what I was doing and confidence, in myself and in my role, because, I was younger than most of the people. So it was a little difficult because they are kind of looking like, I don't recognize this guy. But networking has changed the trajectory of my career. Networking is, I would say, probably one of the most important skills to embody, especially when you're young, because they're not going to forget you because you are young and you're in those rooms. And so networking has been, very important for me. And it's something that I make sure to carve out time to do.
Is it self-taught? Did you learn it? Did you go to a class?
I was not specifically taught how to network. I would just, kind of just see, what's working, and go from there. But I was not specifically taught how to network. No.
So, but we know your personality. So you have the gift of gab.
Yeah.
So and what I'll share, one of the things we do at KRJ Consulting is do some training for the South Carolina Department of Transportation, and we've been doing training for them since 2013. But one of the things that evolved was effective networking. So we actually do a class. We actually went and did it in Charlotte and Raleigh last month, because it is a skill that even people that are way older than you guys don't know how to do, because it's not something that people teach you how to do. And we'll talk about that in our next one. But I want to talk about, just wrapping up, the importance of understanding yourself and how to effectively network. And you can effectively network as an introvert or an extrovert, regardless if you're that gregarious person that has a wonderful open personality like Duane, or you're that shy, quiet type like Peyton. You both resonate in your gifts, but at the end of the day, the networking is a need. I love the fact that you guys have recognized that you need mentors and you need coaches and you need sponsors. And a mentor is somebody that you can pick up the phone and call and get information from, that can guide your steps. A coach is that guiding person that keeps you accountable, that helps you with your mission. But a sponsor is that person that's going to walk you into rooms, that's going to put their name on the line for you, that's going to push you. So if you don't have that in your current setting, I would definitely make sure that you have a person in each and every one of those categories. I also heard, and I think it was McKenzie that mentioned it first, and was talking about how do you grow from here? You know, you had a growth plan in high school, and then you had a strategy in college of what you were going to be doing. But now that you're in your career, nobody is going to sit you down and say, hey, this is where you're going. You have to create your own vision of where you want to go and create a professional development strategy around how you're going to get there. If you can go and look at your organization, do they offer any type of training? And sometimes your role will require them to send you through that training, but there's sometimes it's just training out there. You have to go and ask them, hey, I see that we offer this training. Can I go to that? Or can I participate? And that's in-house. But some of your organizations will pay for you to go to other trainings that are, you know, outside of your organization, or go to conferences that are outside of the organization. Go and find that information out. And then if they won't pay for it, then sometimes you have to invest in yourself. And the only thing you're gonna need to ask them for is a vacation day or whatever to go and participate. That is important. Lifelong learning has gotten me where I am today. And I'm going to tell you that the good news is that it's not the academic type of learning that you had to do, that the syllabus and you're reading these little, you know, boring behind books. I didn't mean it like that, but you know what I'm saying? The books that we read now are not boring books because they're written by people that have been there, done that in the professional world, and they're talking about their life experiences. So the reading part of that is not as difficult. So going and finding a strategy around building out your professional development strategies is very key. And I'm going back through my notes to see if there's anything I missed that I wanted to touch on, and that there's so much, but I think that's it. So I'm going to come back around and give you guys an opportunity to close out with, what advice would you give to this year or any year's graduate entering into the workforce? So we'll start with you, McKenzie.
My advice, so I know that this year's not the best job reporting, but I would say to the new graduates, still be hopeful, be strategic, but be hopeful. Manage your expectations for how long the job search will take. It might not happen immediately after graduation. It might take, some of my peers, it took 6 months after, but then they landed the job and it was the best job and they're still loving it 3-4 years later. So be strategic, be hopeful, and continue to look into your network, practice the things that we wish that maybe we would have practiced sooner, take our advice, hop on the train and take off, enjoy it. But I think it'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Peyton.
Yeah, definitely lean into your network. Don't question yourself. You know, if you don't have a job like a month or 2 or whatever, like it does take a while, or it can take a while, especially in this climate today. Keep the faith, and then also like understand that nobody has truly has the answers. It's all like trial and error. Just make sure that you learn from your error and you continue to iterate and get better as you move.
Raoul, do you want to answer that too?
I would just say keep an open mind, because you might be looking for a job straight ahead and the job comes from left to right. You never know where you're going to get the opportunity from. It may even come from behind you and snack you upside the head. So just keep it up in mind.
Excellent. And Duane.
I really love what Raoul just said, and it touches on something that I was going to say. No one's path is linear. So understand that, there are opportunities there. And that's why I say networking is so important, because you may meet someone that's looking for you, so always, be strategic, manage expectations. Another thing I'd say is listen, active listening. Don't always listen to respond, I think is a big thing, because when you listen, people will give you the answers.
I love that. I love that. We actually teach a communications class as well. And one of the biggest things is teaching people how to actively listen, because that's also a skill like networking that people are not taught. PJ.
Yeah, I would just say ride the wave. Enjoy the journey. It is a journey. Like Duane said, it's not linear, but ride the wave no matter what. And dream big. Dream big, follow your dreams. Don't minimize what it is that you want, and just have faith that you'll line up with it. And success leaves crumbs. So follow those crumbs and line up with wisdom. Wisdom will cut out a lot of the BS and other things that you might run into. So lean on wisdom and listen.
Well, let me say my personal thank you to each and every one of you. I first want to say how proud I am of each and every one of you. What the audience doesn't know is that this group of young professionals, I have known the majority of them either from the age of 3 or 5 or maybe 10. But this is when my initial encounter happened. So it's a blessing for me to have watched you guys grow, to develop into the wonderful, awesome young professionals that you are, and going out and achieving your dreams as you're continuing to learn, as you're continuing to grow, as you're continuing to prosper. The only thing I'm going to ask you guys to commit to is that as you guys continue to grow and prosper and learn, you're going to be the next level of leadership for our community. I just ask that you continue to do it from a servant leadership perspective, that you identify young people that you can touch, young people that you can grow with, and help them understand some of the challenges. You are looking for mentors now and coaches and sponsors, but I also ask that you become one when you're put in those positions to go back and pull other people up. So that's my ask. The other ask is, I really enjoyed this. I hope you did too. So my other ask is that I would like to bring you guys back for another episode at a later time. I don't know if it'll be this year or next year, but I love this conversation. I love what you guys have shared. So if it's okay with you, I would like to invite you guys back to continue this conversation and go a little deeper next time. Is that all right?
Yes, I'm committing to that now.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So I want to thank you again to the audience for coming, to our incredible panelists for sharing their stories and their insights with such honesty. Your experiences shine a light on both the strengths and the shortcomings of how we prepare our young professionals to step into the workforce. What stood out today is that while we get the technical knowledge in the classroom, education are valuable, the real game changers are mentorship, leadership skills, networking, emotional intelligence, communication skills, financial and personal growth tools, and then continue to get that professional development and growth strategies. These are areas where many young professionals feel unprepared, and that's exactly where our Centerverse steps in. The Centerverse was built to provide a community, coaching, and resources that help leaders, entrepreneurs, and eventually young professionals grow in every dimension, professionally, personally, financially, relationally. And for our young professionals, like our panelists, it's a space to gain the confidence, the tools, the connections needed to lead with the synergy and success. To our listeners, if you're a young professional or know one looking for the kind of support, I invite you to connect with us at the Centerverse. Together, we can build a stronger foundation for the next generation of leaders. Until next time, remember, you're responsible for the energy you bring into the room. Make it an intentional, make it powerful, and make it synergistic. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Synergy Leadership Podcast.